All right. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us and welcome to Money Smart Day. Today's session is on student loan repayment. My name's Sabri Stewart. I'm the Assistant Director of Academic Coaching for the Advanced Program, and I'm moderating today's session. So before I introduce our presenter and the presentation itself, just some housekeeping stuff is we are recording the session. Feel free to keep yourselves muted throughout the session, but we'll take questions as we go. So if you have any questions, you can just raise your hand virtually on Zoom, unmute yourself, or put questions in the chat, and I will moderate any questions we have as we go. So with that, we can go ahead and jump in. So again, today's session is on student loan repayment options, and this will be presented to us by Shannon Osborne, who is the Assistant Director for Financial Wellbeing through the Student Support and Advocacy Center. And so with that, I will turn the floor over to you, Shannon.
Awesome. Thank you, Sabri. So as you mentioned, I'm Shannon Osborne. I'm the Assistant Director of Financial Wellbeing, Student Support and Advocacy Center. So really that just means I work with students when it comes to any financial questions, concerns they have. But one of my expertise is on student loan repayment. And so that's what this presentation is going to be about. So we're going to talk a lot about all the different types of student loan repayments that students will face once they officially graduate or fall below half time or withdraw, those kind of things as well. The first, we're going to talk about Perkins loan and private loan, but we're really going to spend a bulk of that talking about direct loans, just because that's usually what students have the most debt for, and that's when it has the specific student loan repayment plans. We're going to talk a little bit about the impact of COVID and how to prepare for repayment, and then also consolidation, different repayment charts. We're going to talk about the income-driven repayment plans, public service loan forgiveness. There's also teacher loan forgiveness, forbearance, and then any other forgiveness or repayment options. And then there'll be time for questions at the end, but as Sabri said, feel free to put questions in the chat throughout as well. So the moral of this slide is just to say there's a lot of information jam-packed in a 1-hour session. So I'm going to try to talk fast, but also not too fast so that you'll be able to follow along. But if you need me to repeat anything, definitely let me know. And we will have these PowerPoint and recordings up on our website later on. So don't feel like you have to write down all the information that you see here by any means. We will send these out at a later date. But yes, we'll just jump in and get started. So the Perkins Loan Program actually ended around September 30th, 2017. So it's not been a program the last 6 years. So if you're recently started school within the last 6 years, you probably have never heard of the Perkins Loan Program. But if you're a graduate student that maybe has some Perkins loans, student loans that are going to go into repayment once you graduate from graduate school, just know those loans have a 9-month grace period. In that grace period, there's no interest accruing because they are subsidy style loans. So while you're in school or you ever return back to school, they will be in school deferment. And then after that, they have a 9-month grace period. Those are typically 5 to 10-year repayments, and repayments are usually done through a third party. So here at Mason, it's done through a third party called ECSI. So if you did undergrad at Mason and you had a Perkins loan from, 10 years ago, and then you took a break and went to grad school and now you're graduating, you would be in repayments through them directly. If you borrowed it from a different university, you would reach out to their financial aid office and ask for information on the Perkins loan. If you don't know if you had a Perkins loan, if you go to studentaid.gov, which you're going to see that website referenced a lot in this presentation, studentaid.gov is kind of the hub for everything. Anything you want, filling out the FAFSA, signing the NPN, entrance counseling, understanding your student loans, any federal loans, all the information will be there. So if you go to studentaid.gov, it would tell you if you have a Perkins loan there. The other type of loans would be private loans. So if you don't know what a private loan is, that means that you went out to a lender and you asked for a loan and you applied for a loan specifically with them. Some big ones would be like Sallie Mae, Wells Fargo, Discover, College Avenue. Those are different types of loans. Private loan lenders, those repayments are typically 10 to 15 years. And then when you picked your private loan, you actually signed up for your repayment plan on that day that you picked your interest rate. So when you apply for a private loan, they give you about 6 different interest rates to choose from. And then depending upon which one you picked, there was an underlining to how much the repayment would be and when the repayment would start and how many years it would be too. So if you don't know if you have a private loan, you can actually look at your credit report and look at your free credit report once a year if you want to through all the reporting agencies. And you can find out if you have any on there that are private loans. But you would know if you have any private loans because that means that you went out separately and applied for the loan directly with Sallie Mae, and then that's how you were able to obtain a private loan too. But the reason we don't spend a lot of time talking about the private loan repayment here is just because, like I said, everybody's is different. You picked your student loan repayment with your private loans when you chose that at that time. So most of these will be spent just on the direct loans that students have. So any questions, like I said, feel free to type in on the Perkins loan or private loan there too. Okay. So before we jump into it, I want to just talk about COVID and how we got here. So a lot of it's confusing as to when is student loan repayment supposed to start? We've been hearing this for the last couple of years that it's going to start, but really what happened necessarily. So in March 2020, the COVID pandemic happened. And so the Secretary of Education directed the Office of Federal Student Aid to provide the following relief measures to federal student loans. So when I say federal, I'm talking about direct subsidized, direct unsubsidized, direct graduate plus loan, direct parent plus loan. So any direct loans of those kinds. Then we were told that we were going to suspend any student loan repayments, stop collections, and interest would be set to 0% for a 60-day period. So there'd be no student loans repayment required for 60 days. Then on March 27, 2020, Congress officially passed what we call the CARES Act. If you guys have all heard of that, it stands for the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. The CARES Act basically had the same measures, it just extended it until September 30th, 2020. And then on August 8th, 2020, President Trump directed the Secretary of Education to continue that pause on student loan repayment until December 31st, 2020. And then December 4th, 2020, he extended it one more time to January 31st, 2021. And then we had a new president come into office in January 2021. And one of the first things Biden did is put an executive order that extended the pause until September 30th, 2021. Then on August 6th, 2021, it was extended again till January 31st, 2022. And then on December 22nd, 2021, he extended it one more time until May 1st, 2022. We were told at that time that would be the last extension that they would do, and repayments would begin starting May 1st, 2022. Then we were told, no, just kidding, it would be one more extension. So we would extend it one more time to August 31st, 2022, but this would for sure be the last one. Then you guys have heard of Biden setting forth his plan for some student loan forgiveness for $10,000 for those that have never had a Pell Grant, and up to $20,000 for those that did have a Pell Grant. And as that started going through, there were lawsuits that came about. And so that's now sitting in various limbo on where that's going. So they extended the pause one more time to expire June 30th, 2023, 60 days after that date. So they're giving them until June 30th, 2023 to figure out what's going on with Biden's forgiveness plan. So the best thing I can say is most likely we're looking at August 30th, 2023 for student loan repayments to begin again, because I don't see anything happening with those lawsuits anytime soon. And it seems like that's still in limbo. So I would definitely say if you're looking at when I'm officially going to begin repayments, it would be roughly around August 30th, 2023. Now, if you were in school at that time, you would still have in-school deferment, which means you're not required to make any payments at all while you're in school. This would only be for those that have graduated or have already fallen into the grace period and used up their grace period, which is 6 months after you graduate. There's that website below at studentaid.gov. It's a really good one to go to see any announcements or anything like that for the changes. But I really like this because it kind of shows the history of how many times it's been adjusted. But this goes to show that for the last over 3 years, there has been no interest or no repayments on any student loans whatsoever due to the COVID pandemic and the pause with that. And I would say for sure, I don't see them extending it again now, especially because Biden announced that I think it's May 11th. He's lifting any emergencies due to COVID that were put in place. So it seems like we're definitely going to start beginning the repayments at the end of August. So the first repayment would be due 30 days after that. So we're looking at payments officially due the end of September. Any questions on this COVID slide?
Well, we do have a question in the chat.
Yeah.
The question is, if you're in undergrad and want to obtain your master's degree, would you have to pay the loans for your undergrad, or would you not have to start making payments until you're done with graduate school?
So it depends on if you take a gap year. So you have a 6-month grace period until repayments begin. So if you graduate this May of 2023 from your undergraduate degree, you would then start a 6-month grace period at that point. So that grace period would end October of 2023. And then if you're starting grad school in January 2024, that means that you might have to make 2 months of student loan repayments for the month of November and the month of December until you begin school. And then once you begin your master's program, as long as you're half-time status, your loans will officially go back into what we call in-school deferment. So you don't have to make any repayments while you're in school at that time. Let's say you graduate in May and then you're going to start school again in August, grad school. You won't use up a 6-month grace period because that's only a 3-month gap. So you wouldn't have to repay anything at all. So the point is, it just depends on when you're officially going to start grad school, if you'll have to start making any repayments. But typically once you're in grad school, as long as you're a half-time status, your loans are deferred. And if you have any subsidized loans, those continue to not accrue interest while you're in school and grad school. It's really only the undergraduate loans that do accrue interest while you're in school or anything like that, once they officially start accruing interest again. Okay. So before you begin, and this is stuff you can do now, even before we've officially started the repayment process, is just to get familiarized with studentaid.gov and familiarized with what steps you need to get started. So like I said, studentaid.gov, you might as well go ahead and bookmark that website. It's not going anywhere. It definitely has all the useful information that you need, and it's been there all along, and it will continue to be there for you. They do have a loan simulator calculator, which I like. So you can put in roughly what your income is, what kind of repayment you're looking at as well. And it can kind of, adjust where your monthly repayment is. The next is you can look at consolidation. You can compare and contrast and see if consolidation is something you want to do or not. And you can get information on public service loan forgiveness as well. So it's definitely a good place you want to go to just get started on learning this stuff. So next is, what is a direct loan servicer? When you officially go into repayment, you're going to make payments directly to what we call your servicer. So your loan that you borrowed when you were in school, let's say you borrowed the unsubsidized and the subsidized loan when you were in undergrad. That is the loan. It's called a subsidized and unsubsidized loan. You're borrowing it from the Department of Education. So it's a direct loan because it comes directly from the government. So the U.S. Department of Education is lending you this loan. The school is just a processor. They're just a completely middle person that just does the processing. So you're not making any repayments to Mason. Mason's not involved in the repayment plan process whatsoever. They're just the ones that physically process the loan and told the U.S. Department of Education what your cost of attendance is and let them know what you were eligible for based upon any aid that you had as well too. So you're not also making repayments directly to U.S. Department of Education. You're making repayments to your servicer. Servicer works for the Department of Education on a contract, and they have said we will collect the payments and then we will give the money to the U.S. Department of Education when somebody pays them. So your servicer can be multiple different servicers. There's kind of a really funny list I have going here of ones like Fed Loans, Great Lakes, Ed Financial, Mohila. These are all different types of servicers. Your servicer probably has already sent you an email. You may or may not have realized it, but they send you an email every time you get a loan that says, hey, we're your servicer. We're here if you have any questions, but you're in school, so you don't need to worry about anything. Or they said, hey, you're in the pause of repayment because of COVID, so you don't have to worry about anything, but the payment's coming up soon. These will change a lot. So Fed Loans, I have a couple asterisks by them. This is their last year from being a servicer. They have not extended it. They were supposed to end it in December of 2022, but with all of this confusion of everything, they allowed it to go one more year. And Granite State no longer is a servicer for these loans as well. So big ones would be like Great Lakes, Ed Financial, Mohila, those kind of things as well. And you can see in parentheses what they took over. So for example, Mohila is taking over the Fed loan servicing. So any loans that were with Fed loan servicing got shifted to Mohila. And that's because Fed loans used to be the sole servicer for public service loan forgiveness, which we'll get to in a little bit. But they have one servicer that oversees all of the applications for public service loan forgiveness. So that was Fed Loans. That is now going to shift to Mohila. So they will be that too. Navient just changed their name basically. So they're Aid Vantage now. So if you see anything from them, that's the type of servicer you have as well. and so on and so forth. So if you don't know who your servicer is, you can log into studentaid.gov and click on underneath my loan servicers, you can click on view servicer detail and you can see who your servicer is. If that's confusing, you can always reach out to the financial aid office. They should be able to provide that because they can see that themselves too. But if they can't, you can always send us an email too, and we can try to help navigate it for you. But really on their website, on your website, studentaid.gov is where it should have a lot of information. So next is when I meet with students, they always say, should I consolidate my loans before I get started? And the answer is, it depends. So if you only have one subsidized loan from, I don't know, the year 2020 and one subsidized loan from the year 2021, you don't really need to necessarily consolidate those loans together. Consolidation basically just means I have all these different types of loans. I'm now going to apply for one giant loan that combines all of these loans together. People often consolidate debt because they want to have one monthly payment instead of multiple monthly payments. When you go into repayment on direct loans, you will automatically have one monthly payment. There's not multiple payments due every month. So you're not going to pay one subsidized loan this month, an unsubsidized loan this month, a graduate plus loan payment this month. You're just going to have one payment to all the direct loans. So you don't necessarily need to do that. However, there are times where if students want to buy a home, I have worked with students before where the lender looks at the number of student loans that are outstanding, and they're like, wow, you have 20 student loans that are outstanding. Even though it's only one monthly payment for all of those 20 loans, they'll say to them, we really think you should consolidate your debt together before you get approved for this home loan, so that it just looks like one loan instead of 20 different loans on your credit report. If that's something you think you want to do, I recommend doing consolidation before you even begin repayment, because every time you consolidate, it's going to be what's called compound interest. So compound interest means anytime that the interest is accruing, so it's following you, when you go into repayment, it's going to be compounded. So if you consolidate your loans, it's going to take any interest that's been accruing and it's going to add to the principal and be compounding too. It also can be super confusing into where things are just in general. So if you think, I want to buy a house one day, I have a lot of different student loans that are out there, I recommend maybe consolidating now before you even begin repayment, just so you can get that out of the way. So it's just one loan on your repayment chart. Sorry, on your credit score that shows there. Consolidation is done through studentaid.gov. So you can go into there, you can click on consolidation, you can run it through that way. The only thing you want to keep in mind is consolidating is applying for a new loan, so it will reduce your credit score by a couple of points in order to do that, which is why you don't want to do it when you're in the process of buying a home, because you don't want to change your credit score at that time. So it's good to do it well in advance of that. Other different types of loans that you cannot consolidate into direct loans would be the Family Federal Education loans. Those ended in about 2010. Those what used to be direct loans, and then direct loans came about. So those ones you can consolidate into the direct loan program, I should say. However, the only thing you want to keep in mind is it would maybe increase the interest rate. So whenever you consolidate your loans together, you're going to get an average interest rate. So if you have a Family Federal Education loan with like a 2% rate and a direct loan with a 4% rate, you consolidate those together, you may have one loan for 3% essentially. So you just have to weigh the pros and cons yourself. You cannot consolidate private loans into direct loans. Perkins loans you can consolidate, and sometimes I recommend doing that too, just so that you don't have 2 monthly payments there. But direct loans, you don't necessarily need to unless it comes to things like buying a home in the future, those kind of things as well. But if you're ever questioning if you should consolidate your loans, you can also meet with our team and we can kind of walk through the pros and cons to help you decide if that's something you want to do or not. But if it is something you want to do, I recommend doing it in the beginning than in the middle of repayment. Okay, so I'm going to take a while to talk about this chart. So there's a bunch of different repayment plan options out there for you, and I took everything together and I put it on one giant chart. So let's talk about it from the beginning. First is a standard repayment. So if you don't do anything at all, your servicer will send you a bill in September, and that payment will be based on a 10-year fixed monthly payment. So that will say, how much do you have to pay every month to pay this loan off at the end of 10 years? And so that might be affordable. Let's say you only borrowed $5,000 during your time at Mason. Maybe that payment is less than $100 a month. And so that is a really affordable amount. So you're fine just kind of leaving that and then setting up the monthly payment that way too. The other thing I want to say before I get into the details of all of this stuff is just there is no penalty for paying loans off early. So you could be in a 10-year standard repayment, pay it off in 2 or 3 years instead, and save yourself the interest that's occurring during that time period. And you will not be penalized for paying these loans off early. So you want to be in the lowest monthly payment plan so that you can dictate how much you pay per month. Next is what we call a graduated repayment plan. I don't love this one, but it is a good option to offer relief for people that need relief in the beginning. I just don't love it because it's hard to predict what's going to happen in the future to know if you could afford an increase. So the way it works is that you pay that much, how much you pay every 2 years, it'll increase. So the idea is that when you first graduate, you don't have your first real job just yet. And so you need a little bit of time. And then even when you do have your first job, you're just making entry level pay. And then over time, you're getting promotions, you're getting increases. And so you'll be able to pay more later. So the idea is every 2 years, you pay a certain amount until you pay it off at the end of 10 years. There's also what's called the extended repayment plan. So if you have at least $30,000 of direct loan debt, so it can't be private loan and direct loan debt combined. It has to be just $30,000 of direct loan debt. You can pay it off in 25 years. So how much should I pay every month to pay it off in 25 years? If you don't have at least 30,000, you would want to look at graduate repayment as an option just to help offer relief in the beginning and then increase it over time if the 10-year is too much for you to pay at that time. If you want to get started on the graduated or the extended repayment plan, you would just contact your servicer directly and ask to be put on that. And then they'll just update it for you and have you fill out a couple small forms. And then you would just get on those. The standard graduated and extended repayment plan options all assume that you're going to pay this off in full. So this is how much you have to pay this off in full. But again, no penalty for paying these loans off early. So if you're on the 25-year extended repayment plan and you pay it off in 7 years instead, there's no penalty for doing that too. The next are going to offer relief to that. So the standard, the graduated and extended might be affordable if you only have a couple $1,000s of debt. But if you are like myself or some other people that are graduate students, you might have closer to over $100,000 of debt just because graduate school is expensive. And so you might need to offer a little bit more relief on that. And that's where the income-driven repayment plans come into play. So any questions on the standard or graduate extended before I get into the income-driven? I'm going to take a drink.
I don't see any yet in the chat.
Right. So the income-driven repayment plans offer relief to those top 3 payment plans because they say you have a lot more debt. You need to have more flexibility with what your monthly payments will be. So in order to qualify for an income-driven repayment plan, it's a debt to income ratio. So high student loan debt, low income, you qualify. So if your income is $50,000 and you only have $30,000 worth of debt, you're not necessarily going to qualify for an income-driven repayment plan. But if you have $150,000 of debt and you make $70,000 a year, then you would qualify for an income-driven repayment plan. You also only have to qualify once in the beginning as long as you maintain what we call a recertification every year and you never miss what we call your anniversary date, which we'll go into. But as long as you maintain that and you're maintaining your monthly payments, then you only have to qualify in the beginning. So I'm actually going to start at the bottom of this sheet for the income-driven repayments. I'm going to start with the income contingent repayment because that's the least one used. Income contingent repayment says, how much do you pay every month under the 20% discretionary income with the income-driven repayment plan? So the discretionary income is a really crazy mathematical equation that you don't have to write down, but it takes into account your adjusted gross income or AGI on your taxes and your total household number size. So if you have children, those kind of things as well, it takes into account, and it's over 150% of the poverty level of the state you live in. So then it spits out a number that's 20% discretionary based upon that. You then have 25 years to pay off these loans. So if you pay every month 20% discretionary income, at the end of 25 years, anything left over would be forgiven. So doesn't matter where you work, whether you work in a nonprofit, a for-profit, whether you work or you don't work at all, and you're stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad or something like that, then at the end of 25 years, if you make on-time qualifying repayments, anything left over will be forgiven. However, you pay tax on how much is forgiven. So at the end of 25 years, you would have to submit to the taxes what's called a 1099-C, which basically says how much has been forgiven and canceled because of your repayment, and then you would pay tax on how much that is. This is where people usually ask, well, hey, Shannon, how much tax would I have to pay? And this is when I say, I have no way to know because I don't know what you'll be making in 25 years. I don't know if you'll have children in 25 years. I don't even know what taxes will look like in 25 years. We will go through multiple different presidents that might change laws. And I don't know what tax brackets will look like for 25 years. But I'm telling you 25 years in advance that you would pay tax. So what you could do is you could pay yourself and you can invest some of that money and kind of grow a little tax nest egg so that in 25 years, maybe you've grown $25,000 or $30,000 that you can put towards the tax on the forgiveness that you might have later. So again, that's just forgiveness at the end if you just have income contingent repayment plan. If you're a parent that has a Parent Plus loan only, you can only consolidate a Parent Plus loan if you have unsub or subsidized or Graduate Plus loans yourself. You cannot consolidate Parent Plus loans with just Parent Plus loans. And if your parent has a Parent Plus loan because you were in school, that is their loan. It is not your loan. So you cannot consolidate their Parent Plus loan into your loan. The only way to consolidate a Parent Plus loan would be like if I have my graduate loans of an unsubsidized and a Graduate Plus loan, and when my son goes to college, I have a Parent Plus loan for him, I can consolidate my Parent Plus loans with my graduate level loans, and then I can apply for income contingent repayment on all of them together. But if you just have a Parent Plus loan and nothing else as a parent, then you can't qualify for an income to repayment plan like this. I'll get into a little bit more of the other information here in a second, but I really just want to kind of talk about the various repayments and everything too. So after the income contingent repayment plan, the next one that's not used as often, but it is a good one too. It's maybe one of the top two that's used, I should actually say, is the income-based repayment or IBR. So this one's 15% discretionary income. So this is how much do I pay every month to pay it off, and how much do I pay every month to pay 15% of my discretionary income. And it's 25 years forgiveness if you are a new borrower. They then came up with what's called a new IBR or new income-based repayment. And I absolutely hate it. I don't like the new income-based repayment because it's basically pay as you earn. They're just calling it something different. And I think it's way more confusing. But if you hear anybody talk about the new income-based repayment, that's based off 20% discretionary income. And that's based off 20 years if you're a new borrower. But if those were the cases, you would qualify for pay as you earn anyway. So I'm going to avoid talking about new income-based repayment and just kind of focus on regular income-based repayment and pay as you earn as well. But again, at the end of 25 years, you would get forgiveness on anything that's left over. Income contingent is only better in my mind than income-based repayment if you and your spouse both have a high student loan debt. So let's say that you graduated from law school and your spouse graduated from medical school and you both borrowed loans the entire time, and together you have $400,000 of debt combined. You might want to consider doing income contingent repayment plan, because what that will do would mean you can make one payment for the household, and then it would put 10% towards this loan and 10% towards this loan, and then it's 20% the household has to pay. But that's also not great because that's basically pay as you earn. So you could just pay them separately under pay as you earn. And I pay 10% with my income and my spouse pays 10% with their income, and together it's 20%. But if making 2 monthly payments towards your student loans is more confusing than 1 monthly payment between you and your spouse, then maybe you do look at income contingent repayment. But typically that's why people stick with just pay as you earn. So with income-based repayment, like we said, 15% discretionary income and then forgiveness at the end of 25 years. Then Obama actually created the pay as you earn one. So that one he created to be 10% discretionary income, and it's 20 years forgiveness for both undergrad and graduate debt. So it's a lot less at 10% discretionary income, and it's 20 years forgiveness. The only key to pay as you earn though is that date is what kind of trips people. So under the far right column, you'll see where it says you have to be a new borrower after October 1st, 2007. So that means you can't have borrowed loans before October 1st, 2007. Even if you repaid them, it still means that you borrowed them before October 1st, 2007. So you wouldn't qualify for pay as you earn. But if you didn't start graduate school or undergraduate school or anything like that until after October 1st, 2007, then you would qualify for pay as you earn, which pay as you earn is the lowest monthly payment out there, and they're the best option. So I think that's one that I usually tell students to go for. So a lot of people then said, well, that's not fair. I repaid my loans. I did borrow them before 2007, but I repaid them. So then the government said, okay, we'll come out with a creative name and we'll call it revised pay as you earn. And revised pay as you earn, as you see on the right there, it doesn't have a date, so you don't have to be a new borrower. So you can qualify for the 10% discretionary income. However, they changed it to say you get 20 years to repay to get forgiveness of undergraduate loans and 25 years to repay to forgive any graduate loans that you have. And however, you're still taxed on how much is forgiven at the end too. The other thing I would say that's different about these each repayment plans is when it comes to repayments, you can, so let me backtrack. When it comes to filing taxes, you can file taxes if you're married a couple of ways. One way is that you can be married filing jointly, which means you joint together what the total income is that the you and your spouse make. And if you're married filing jointly, that's your total AGI. You can also be married filing separately. If you're married filing separately, then you only have your income and your spouse has their income as well. With income-based repayment and pay as you earn, you can be married filing separately and will only look at your income to determine your monthly payment as a household, and it will separate out your spouse's income. Well, when they adjusted this and created the revised pay as you earn, they saw that people were filing separately, and they said, even if you file separately from your spouse with revised pay as you earn, we're still going to ask for the spousal information. So to me, it's not necessarily worth it because of the amount of money you'd be saving by just sticking with just pay as you earn or income-based repayment as the top two. So like I said, those 25 years is no matter where you work, whether it's for-profit, nonprofit, whether you work or don't work, and then you pay tax and how much is forgiven. I haven't talked about public service loan forgiveness yet. Those are just the repayment options. The reason I separate public service loan forgiveness from talking about the repayment plans is because I meet with students all the time that say, I'm on the public service loan forgiveness repayment plan. And I say, no, you're not. You're on the income-driven repayment plan. A benefit if you have of working in a nonprofit is public service loan forgiveness, but your repayment plan is one of these ones. There's no public service loan forgiveness repayment plan. That's just a benefit you have. These are the different types of repayment plans. So before I get into public service loan forgiveness, I'm going to pause if there's any questions or anybody wants me to go over any of these first.
So we do have a question. What is your repayment plan? Oh, actually, it's not a question. What is your repayment plan? Is a great question if you have future ideas about your significant other. I wasn't sure if Llewellyn, if you wanted to expand on that at all. Feel free to unmute yourself or add stuff in the
I'm
chat.
thinking you're maybe asking what you would choose if your repayment plan, if you don't know what the future will look like of a significant other, if you're going to get married or not. Is that what you're saying? If the question is, what if we don't know if we're going to be married in the future? I would say stick with either pay as you earn or income-based repayment, because it's really hard to get out of a repayment plan and then jump into a new one. And so if you're in revised pay as you earn, you get married and then you don't want to include special information, you want to switch to pay as you earn, there's a chance pay as you earn might not be a repayment plan anymore at that time, so you can't get into it. But either way, I would just stick with what you think you're going to want for the rest of the time in the beginning type thing. The other thing I will say too of the comment of the spouse will become responsible, it's just your payment on your student loans type thing. So there is a fine print on direct loans, and it's not fun to talk about, but it's good to know your protections that say that they're forgiven in death or permanent disability. So if you ever pass away or you become permanently disabled, these loans will be forgiven and your spouse does not have to repay those loans. It's not part of an estate that they would have to take money out as well too. Same thing with your parents. So if your parents borrowed a Parent Plus loan on your behalf, and then you passed away, you can get forgiveness through that way too. Or if they pass away, you don't have to repay back the Parent Plus loan too. So it's good to know, because especially if people have high student loan debt, the spouse may be like, financially, you have a lot of debt. I don't know if us getting married makes sense or anything, because there's a lot of student loan debt. You can just let them know it's my student loan debt. I'm repaying it. If anything happens to me, it doesn't pass on to our children or anything like that as well too. Okay, so I'm going to jump into public service loan forgiveness, I'm going to jump into how to get on the income driven repayment plan. And then I'm going to talk about public service loan forgiveness and maybe jump back a little bit too. So income driven repayment plans, how do I sign up for them? That is done through studentaid.gov. Let's say that you want to be on income-based repayment or pay as you earn, you can sign up through studentaid.gov. You can actually do it now before you even have to begin repayment, just so you can roughly see what that will look like. It just means that they're going to hold it until the grace period ends, the application, until they have to process it through. But you go to studentaid.gov and you can say that I want to be on the pay as you earn repayment plan, and they'll take your most recent taxes in order to see what that monthly income looks like. If you ever did the IRS tax retrieval on the FAFSA that pulled your taxes directly from the IRS onto the FAFSA, it's the same thing here. So you're using the IRS data retrieval tool. You're going to pull the information directly from the IRS onto the application for income driven repayment, and then it will determine what the monthly payment is going to look like as well. You then have to keep in mind that you're going to have to do that every year. So every year you're going to have what's called an anniversary date. So your anniversary date is going to be 1 year after your first monthly payment. So let's operate with August here. It's August 30th. You get your first bill. It's based off pay as you earn, and it's due September 30th. That means every August, September range, you're going to have to go back to studentaid.gov and do what's called the annual recertification of your student loans. And that means you're going to have to pull in your most recent taxes again, and it will determine what your next year's monthly payment will be. These loans are called income-driven repayments because your income drives the repayment. It's called pay as you earn because you pay more as you earn more, or you pay less as you earn less type thing. In order for them to determine that, that's why they have to do recertification every year. They will send you a reminder about 3 or 4 months before your anniversary date, your servicer will, and it will come through your email as a secured message that says log into Mohila and read the secure message. And then the message will say it's due for your annual recertification. Go to studentaid.gov and do the annual recertification. But it's really your responsibility to make sure it's being done. You're not going to be called by them. They're not going to show up at your door and making sure that that's done. It's really put on you to make sure it's done every year. So set a reminder in your phone. If it's August, September, maybe you want, because you want to start these about a month or two before they're due, because it takes time to process them. So if your repayment begins September 1st, that's going to be your anniversary date every year. Maybe you make it July 4th, holiday time, to say every July 4th, I'm going to do my annual recertification so I can maintain being on pay as you earn or income-based repayment, whichever one you're on. And you go back to studentaid.gov and pull in the most recent taxes. And so with those, if you never miss your anniversary date, then you never will be kicked out of the program. If you do miss your anniversary date, you'll have to reapply for pay as you earn all over again. What if you make too much money now? You might not qualify for pay as you earn anymore, because remember, it's a debt to income ratio. So maybe you don't qualify for it anymore. Maybe the pay as you earn repayment plan got removed by the government, and so it's no longer an option as well too. So that's why you want to make sure you never miss your anniversary date, and you make sure you're maintaining that every year for the pay as you earn or the income-based repayment. And that's why it's important to make sure you file your taxes every year as well. Okay, so public service loan forgiveness. I'm sure you all have heard about it, and there's a lot of questions of what it necessarily means. Public service loan forgiveness says if you work in a non-for-profit, and so a U.S. federal government, nonprofit, state, local, or tribal government, and you are a full-time employee, then you can qualify for public service loan forgiveness. They determine full-time to be at least 30 hours a week. However, full-time is determined by the place of employment. So if you work somewhere that their full-time is considered 38 hours a week, then you would have to work 38 hours a week to qualify for public service loan forgiveness full-time. However, if you work part-time somewhere, let's say that you're a professor at Mason working 15 hours a week, and your professor at Nova working 15 hours a week, you could partner 2 part-time jobs at 2 public sectors together to make the full-time work as well. You can also work full-time at Mason and have your own for-profit, I don't know, hair business doing hair on the weekends. And as long as one of them is full-time status at public service loan forgiveness, you could still qualify for that. Public service loan forgiveness says as long as you work full-time in a nonprofit or public sector and you make on-time qualifying repayments, then after 120 payments, you can get forgiveness on how much loan is left over. So instead of 20 or 25 years, now we're looking at 10 years. And the asterisk to this too is in addition, anything left over is not taxed. So remember, we said 20 or 25 years forgiveness, and then it would be taxed. At the end of 10 years, it's not taxed on how much is forgiven. It's also only payments made after October 1st, 2007, because that's when they came up with public service loan forgiveness qualifies. I had Fed loan servicing here, but I said this is changing because that's now announced that that's going to be MOHELA, and only direct loans qualify. So if you heard in the news that these horror stories from people that didn't realize they were had the wrong loans the entire time, that means they had the family federal education loans and did not have direct loans. Now, I will say in 2007, 2008, there was a big campaign push and emails were sent that said, if you want to qualify for certain forgiveness plans, you have to be in direct loans. Now is your time to consolidate to direct loans. But you and I both know nobody checks their email, so people miss that. So they made assumptions that they were in the right loans and that they were going to work 10 years and that would just magically disappear. So they didn't find out to the end of 10 years that they were missing out the entire time. That's why last year the government came out with a public service loan forgiveness adjustment, a temporary period. So they did allow people that thought they were in the wrong loans to now be in the right loans. So we're seeing a big increase of people getting forgiveness now all of a sudden because we adjusted that and said, we understand you thought you were in the right loans, but you weren't. But if you have just direct loans, then you automatically qualify based on those loans. Private loans do not qualify. Those are private loans and they're going to make you pay everything back. There's going to be no forgiveness options for them. You also have to complete what's called employment certification form. So an ECF. So an employment certification form, you would send directly to the company that you work for. They are not approving you for public service loan forgiveness because that's not their program. What they are doing is verifying that you're an employee there. So if you're an employee at Mason, you would just send the ECF form to hrverify@gmu.edu. I recommend doing this now, even before we go into repayments, just so you can get started on it. And then there's a link at the bottom for the employment certification form, but you can also go to Google and just type in PSLF for public service loan forgiveness, ECF for employment certification form, and it should be that first link on Google. But all the HR is doing is just saying, yep, Sabri works for us full time. We are a nonprofit. And so here's the form. Then it's her responsibility to turn that form in. So I believe it's page 4 of the forms gives MOHELA's information on where to send it to. Because remember, I said MOHELA was the sole servicer for public service loan forgiveness. So that means MOHELA is going to take those loans that you have from A Advantage and they're going to pull it over into MOHELA and they will become your servicer. So they will switch the servicer on your behalf. It's only to do it a lot in the beginning of the switching, and then every year you're just doing a new one and you can submit it online through your portal through MOHELA. You want to do the employment certification form every year. So you really only have to do it at the end of 10 years, and at 10 years, you turn in the employment certification form, but they're going to ask you to go back to previous employees and get one from every employee you worked at for the past 10 years. So there's a multitude of different things here. That can be really tough. Let's say you left a place of employment on not great terms. It could be hard to call them up and be like, hey, can I please get you to fill out this form from a job I worked at 4 years ago? Let's say the company shut down. That can be really muddy and gray too. It's easier to do this every year. Also, MOHELA will help you track. If you turn it in every year, they will say, you know, you've made 10 qualifying repayments towards public service loan forgiveness, and they will track it with you. The other thing is you want to make sure that it's really counting towards public service loan forgiveness. So a lot of these people just waited to the end of 10 years, assuming they were on the right thing, assuming they were in the right employee, only to find out at the end of 10 years it was wrong all along. If they had turned in an employment certification form every year, they would have found out many years ago that they were in the wrong repayment or they worked for the wrong company, and none of that really qualified for it. So when should I do the employment certification form every year then? Do it when you do your anniversary date for your recertification of your income driven repayment plan. So every July 4th, for example, you would want to do the recertification and do another employment certification form. That way you're making sure you do it every year. Again, it's also 120 payments. It's not just 10 years overall. So you can take a break. You could work at a for-profit in between working at nonprofit, and then you could pick right back off where you left off from if you go back to a nonprofit. You could take a year or two off to have a baby, and then you can start back over again once you start working in a nonprofit. In addition to it as well, with that employment certification form, like I said, will get you officially started in the program, but you want to make sure you're maintaining those monthly payments every month. So the goal here is to really educate people on paying on time every month. So let's say that your payment is due on the 16th of every month. They have a rule that you can't pay more than 10 days early or 15 days late. So I say set up auto pay. I'm usually not a big fan of auto pay from things because it can cause trouble, especially if you don't have enough money in your bank account to clear the auto pay. But this is something you're definitely going to want to auto pay, so you make sure you pay it every month so you're not paying too early or too late and then being disqualified for it because of that. So keep in mind, like I said, the payment plan you're signing up for would be like pay as you earn, for example. And that's going to be how much you pay every month. But then the benefit you have of working in a nonprofit is public service loan forgiveness. Any questions so far? Because that can be super confusing on public service loan forgiveness. So I can pause there for a second.
I don't see any.
Okay. For the sake of time, I'm going to go a little bit faster because I want to make sure I wrap up by 3:30 for everybody. So there's another forgiveness plan out there too called teacher loan forgiveness. So a lot of times people spend so much time talking about public service loan forgiveness, they don't talk a lot about teacher loan forgiveness too. So teacher loan forgiveness is really for those that are going to be in primary, secondary education teaching, not higher education teaching. You can get up to $17,500 for teachers that are teaching anything, I would say, in the STEM field. So science, math, special education, and anybody else, it would be $5,000 for all other subjects. You have to be working for 5 consecutive years. So this is different than public service loan forgiveness. You can't take breaks. So it has to be 5 consecutive academic years. And you have to be working in a low income area or low income school to qualify. Any loans can see that forgiveness. That would be any direct loans or family federal education loans. It's not for plus loans. So the graduate plus loan or the Perkins loan wouldn't qualify, but it would be like an subsidized loan. And the answer is yes. There's no reason you can't qualify for teacher loan forgiveness and public service loan forgiveness too. So you could work and teach in an elementary school and get your loans forgiven up to $17,500 after 5 years and get the rest of the loans forgiveness at the end of 10 years as well too. So you could partner them together. And then the other thing is you don't fill out the application until at the end, and then there's a link to the application to fill out. There's no specific servicer, so you would just give it directly to your servicer to qualify for teacher loan forgiveness. Oops. Next is forbearance. So let's say that all of this that I said here was just completely overwhelming and you don't even know where to begin. You do have what's called a financial hardship forbearance. So during that time, that means that you can call your servicer and say, I really can't afford these payments. I'm not making enough money. Can I get my loans put into forbearance? And they'll say, okay, we can allow up to 1 year of a forbearance. During that time, you're not required to make any repayments. However, interest is still accruing. The caveat to that part is though that the COVID pause is called a forbearance pause because of COVID, but because it's a separate rule, there's no interest accruing right now. And anything that's been paused because of COVID does qualify for public service loan forgiveness. So even though nobody's been required to make any repayments for the last 3 years, if you've been working full-time in a nonprofit the last 3 years, that all counts towards public service loan forgiveness as well. If you're in things like AmeriCorps or Teach for America, those automatically come with the forbearance, so you could definitely pause repayment for those times. However, interest is still accruing. The only thing I would say to like Teach for America, for example, or AmeriCorps is just naturally you're not making a lot of money, so you qualify for pay as you earn an income-based repayment. So you might qualify for a $0 a month payment because that does count as a qualifying repayment. And you're working at a nonprofit, so that could count towards public service loan forgiveness. So if you're thinking about doing Teach for America or Teach for America or AmeriCorps, I do not recommend doing forbearance. I recommend signing up for pay as you earn income-based repayment to start setting up public service loan forgiveness at that time. Next are other programs. So there is something called National Health Service Corps. There's also Virginia Health Service Corps. If you are social work or medical nurse, those kind of fields, they are an application you can fill out. And if you're accepted to the National Health Service Corps or Virginia Health Service Corps, they have repayments that if you work a certain number of years for them, they'll give you money you can put towards your student loan debt. And so the idea is that they work in an underserved area. So if it's National Health Service Corps, they might send you anywhere in the country. They could send you to Arizona or something like that and work in an underserved area. If it's Virginia, they'll send you to an underserved area in the state too. So again, you could do public service loan forgiveness and Virginia Health Service Corps and teacher loan forgiveness all at the same time. There's no rules about not doing all of them. There's also military benefits you can have on forgiveness as well if you work for the military in the future. But yeah, so that's kind of me running through everything pretty quickly. Like I said, you can also send us an email at the financial being team at fwb@gmu.edu as you get close to repayments, and so we can sit down and look at everything. You can also check out our website. Our financial being website has a lot of information that can be super helpful as well. But let me know too if you have any questions. I can also go to a previous screen if you want me to go over anything in a little bit more depth. But thank you for attending this session, and the next two that we have to wrap up today on Money Smart Day, the next one is on salary negotiation. So that's a really great one to attend after this one. Now we talk about how to repay those loans. We need to talk about the salary to get to repay the loans. And then the one after that is going to be on financial planning as well too. So for future planning. But yeah, let me know what kind of questions you have.
And as we're waiting for questions, just so you know, we'll put the PowerPoint and the recording up on our Money Smart website. So I just posted that in the chat as well. Does anyone have any questions for Shannon?
And if you don't have any questions, feel free just to sign off or anything.
Thanks so much, everyone.